Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer on demystifying school finance and audit readiness. Today, we're unpacking the high stakes and honestly, often pretty stressful world of school financial management. If you are part of a school's leadership team, you already know that managing public and school funds isn't just about balancing a checkbook. It's a highly complex, heavily regulated environment, and getting it right is absolutely fundamental to the very survival and success of your institution. So, I just got to ask you right up front. Is your school actually audit ready? You can really think of financial management as a bit of a hero's journey. You, as the school leadership, whether you're the principal, a bursar, or sitting on the school governing body, you're the protectors of your learners and your funding. When you manage finances well, you secure the resources your students need to thrive. But when the auditors finally come knocking, are you completely confident that your shield is strong enough to withstand their scrutiny? Because look, let's be totally honest here. The stakes are incredibly high. Poor preparation doesn't just mean a little slap on the wrist. We're talking about severe, real-world consequences. A qualified or adverse audit opinion can seriously damage a school's reputation overnight. It can trigger direct interventions from the Department of Basic Education. Worse yet, financial irregularities literally harm the community by stripping resources away from the learners who need them the most. It leads to this massive loss of trust from parents and funders. And on a personal level, it can create real legal liability for SGB members and staff. So getting this right isn't just about ticking compliance boxes. It's absolutely crucial for your school's survival. To help you navigate all of this without getting overwhelmed, we're going to break this complex topic down into manageable, bite-sized pieces. We'll be looking at the financial health blueprint, roles and responsibilities, the monthly financial pulse, mastering school procurement, and finally, preparing for the audit. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the Financial Health Blueprint. This is all about laying that critical foundation for compliance. Every healthy building needs a rock-solid foundation, right? Well, for a school, that bedrock is your school finance policy. A lot of folks just view policies as annoying bureaucratic red tape, but that is a dangerous misconception. Actually, scratch that. It's more like your school's armor. It governs absolutely everything, all the income, every single cent of expenditure, and all school assets. It forces you into alignment with major legislation like the South African Schools Act, the PFMA, and GRAP accounting standards. But more than that, a really well-crafted policy protects your school's assets from fraud and guarantees that you're consistently ready for both internal and external audits. It just sets the rules of the game so everyone knows how to play safely. Ultimately, your entire policy boils down to this one core philosophy: the transparent, accountable, and effective use of public and school funds. And why does this matter so much? Because at the end of the day, every rand saved from mismanagement is a rand invested right back into serving your learners effectively. Moving right along to Section 2, roles and responsibilities. Basically, who does what in school finance? Now, what's really interesting about this is you can have the absolute best playbook in the world, but a team just cannot win if the players don't know their positions, right? This matrix is a brilliant way to map out exactly who does what. We're using a Rossi model here. That stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Just take a look at budget approval for a second. The principal is responsible for doing the actual groundwork, but the SGB is ultimately accountable. Or when it comes to the monthly bank reconciliation, the SGB treasurer is the one responsible for actually getting it done, while the SGB as a whole remains accountable. Notice the clear division of labor here? It perfectly balances the SGB's high-level oversight with the principal and administrative staff's day-to-day operational execution. I really want to anchor that dense table with this simple, unavoidable fact. The SGB holds ultimate fiduciary responsibility. Sure, tasks like signing checks or reconciling bank statements are delegated, obviously, but the governing body ultimately carries the legal weight if things go sideways. That's why having these oversight mechanisms isn't micromanagement. It's literally a legal necessity. Okay, on to Section 3, the monthly financial pulse. Think of this as your school's ongoing financial report card. Just like you wouldn't wait until December to find out a student is failing all their classes, you definitely shouldn't wait until the annual audit to find out your budget is bleeding. A massive part of that monthly rhythm relies on paying very close attention to variances. The magic number to remember here is 5%, or 5,000 Rand. If any expense category deviates from your budget by more than 5%, or R5,000, there is no way you can ignore it. It has to be actively investigated and explained in your monthly report. Was there an emergency roof repair? Did the municipality suddenly hike the utility tariffs? You need to know exactly why those numbers are shifting. And the monthly financial report template is exactly what empowers the SGB to do this. It takes all that raw, overwhelming data and turns it into actionable insights. It kicks off with a simple executive narrative so everyone understands the big picture. Then it tracks income and expenditure versus the budget, showing you exactly what your net surplus or deficit is. But honestly, the most powerful part is the risks and concerns matrix. This flags the high-risk issues like maybe a massive fee collection shortfall or a sudden utility overspend, and it forces management to provide recommended mitigation actions right then and there. It totally transforms your governance from reactive to proactive. Which brings us to Section 4, Mastering School Procurement, or spending money the right way. Look, how a school spends its money is undeniably the single most heavily scrutinized area during any audit, period. If auditors are gonna find a problem, they're gonna find it right here. So the crucial point is that you absolutely must have an ironclad approval authority table in place. This dictates exactly who must sign off on an expense based purely on its transaction value. As the value increases, the required oversight scales right up with it. For a small purchase up to R5,000, the principal and treasurer sign off with just an invoice and a quote. But move up to R25,000 and suddenly you're going to need the SGB chairperson and 3 written quotes. And then we hit the big one, R100,000. Anything above this threshold completely changes the game. A purchase of this size requires the full school governing body to sign off. It requires a formal minuted resolution, and it requires a full-blown competitive tender process. You simply cannot cut corners when you're spending this level of public funds. Woven into all of this is the strict 3-quote principle. Whenever you're buying goods or services above that initial petty cash threshold, you've got to follow these steps. First, you obtain at least 3 written quotes. Simple enough? Second, and oh boy, this trips up so many schools, you must verify that the suppliers have valid SARS pins for tax clearance. You literally cannot do business with non-compliant suppliers. Finally, you generate an official order form signed by the principal. And a vital rule to remember, no verbal or retrospective orders are ever allowed. If it isn't documented before the purchase, it's an audit finding just waiting to happen. All right, final stretch, Section 5, Preparing for the Audit, Passing the Ultimate Test. I want to assure you, if you followed the blueprint, respected the roles, monitored the monthly pulse, and tightly controlled your procurement, this part, it's going to be a breeze. The preparation process is guided by a comprehensive 59-item audit readiness checklist, and it's broken down into 8 broad verification categories. It covers everything from your governance and policy docs to asset management and fraud prevention. One specific area you definitely want to pay special attention to is government grants, specifically the NSNP, the National School Nutrition Program. Auditors will rigorously check that these funds are kept in separate ledgers and that the expenditure records perfectly match the number of learners fed. When you document this correctly, you ensure your learners get fed safely without triggering massive compliance violations. And this brilliantly illustrates the chronological timeline you're working against for your annual financial statements, or AFS. It's strict. Your draft AFS has to be prepared by the 31st of March. Next, it must be formally approved by an SBG resolution. Only after that is it submitted to the Provincial Education Department, and finally, the independent audit review is conducted. Missing these deadlines is a massive red flag before the auditors even walk through the door. So here is a highly practical tip for using that checklist. Please don't just tick boxes. Actively use the high-risk items summary section. As you go through your prep, you will inevitably find gaps. That's normal. Just prioritize them. Categorize them into high, medium, and low risk. Finding out you have a missing SARS pin from a major supplier? Yeah, that's high risk. Fix it before the auditors arrive. Tracking your urgent actions systematically takes all the panic out of the process. Which brings us right back to where we started. Is your school's financial pulse beating strong? And are you ready to conquer your next audit? Financial compliance really doesn't have to be this nightmare of year-end panic. By implementing proper policies, respecting those approval thresholds we talked about, and maintaining a strict monthly reporting rhythm, you can completely transform your audit preparation into a seamless, year-round operational rhythm. I highly encourage you to review your school's finance policy against these standards today. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and hey, here's to a clean, stress-free audit.